All right, we are live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Convention Conversations episode 16, Stage Manager Resolutions with Dr. Jennifer. My name is Jason Heil, and I am a member, and I will be moderating today. And we are joined today by Heather Brose, Ruth Eitmiller, and Jennifer Shire. Who will all be discussing all things stage management and stage management resolution. Before we begin, let's hear. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves fully with your names, pronouns, region, and position, and then I'll share a short land acknowledgement. Heather, why don't you begin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather M. Brose. I'm the San Diego Liaison Delegate, and I am on the land of the Kumeyaay. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And yeah, I will throw it to Ruth.
Thanks, Heather. My name is Ruth Eitmiller. I use she, her pronouns, and I am on the land of the Duwamish people, and I'm a Western Stage Management Delegate.
And Dr. Shire, Dr. Jennifer.
To me, yes. My defense hasn't quite happened yet, but we're so close. We're almost there. I'm Jennifer Shire, also known as Dr. Shire, Dr. Jen. She, hers, her. And I am coming to you from the lands of the Kickapoo, Peoria, Miami, and Kaskaskia, also known as Champaign, Illinois. I am not a delegate, but I am researching the history of United States stage management history here at Illinois.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm Jason Heil, and I live on the land of the Kumeyaay in San Diego. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm actually currently on the road, so I can do what those who are listening can do. I'm throwing in the chat right now. If you don't know where your whose land you are currently on, there are some ways you can do that, and I just threw those up into the chat. And we think it's important to recognize the lands that we are on. I'm going to read our mission statement and code of conduct, and then we will begin our panel today. The Transparency Coalition is a group of Actors Equity Association delegates dedicated to leadership and communication that is truly representative of our union members. We're bringing the discussion of convention resolutions and amendments directly to the members through a series of live discussions, allowing members to ask questions and express their support or concerns in real time. We are committed to creating an environment that is rooted in respect so that we can productively create and sustain this inclusive, respectful, brave, safe space to discuss complicated issues. We will always extend that respect to members watching, and we seek the same in return. What we ask is that both the members engaging in conversation with us and the delegates themselves hold these two agreements. Speak from the I, confront confusion or discomfort with curious questions. While we are happy to engage in constructive debate, we view harassment and discrimination as a clear threat to free expression and participant safety, and as such, they will not be tolerated. We ask that members who engage with us give us the grace to say, I don't know, or to get it wrong sometimes. We bring you this series of convention conversations not only to have meaningful dialogue with current and future members, but to learn more ourselves about the important policies of our union and to enhance our ability to serve as trusted liaisons for our fellow union members. And I do want to encourage everyone who's watching today live, please feel free to throw questions and comments in the chat, or you can direct message me as the moderator, and I'm happy to share those. If you would like a comment shared quietly, we ask that you do it. If you want it shared anonymously, we ask that you just let me know. This is our second episode addressing stage management focused resolutions. If you didn't catch the first one, you can watch episode 13 change the name. And Dr. Jennifer, I know, spoke extensively there. So if there are no further questions, we will begin discussing the first resolution here. Before I jump in, as I have not seen episode 13 yet, Heather, is there anything that we want to carry over from that or begin with there before I go into the resolutions?
I would love to speak to something about that because we
Thank
got
you.
information yesterday on the financials of everything.
Thank you.
And so that is going to affect a lot of people how they vote. So I'm going to implore those of you who are watching, who are going to see the price tags on some of these. We have questions on how staff came to those numbers. We're not saying that it's not true, but some of the price tags are exorbitantly high. So I think that some of the price tags are the end game for things, but the change to the name is only we asked council within 3 years to come up with a strategy to do so. There should be no cost to doing that. So, and if there is, it should be relatively minor. So we just ask for you to keep, an open mind, especially when it comes to the price tag. Because we know coming out of this that we're going to not be able to spend a lot of money on things. But we also believe that in order for everyone in our union to have a fair shot at being members in this union, the name has to reflect that. For one of the first things that I found, we all got swag boxes. We could talk about that as well. But we were included in that as stage managers. And I will hold up, like here's the pen. It's like, you can see, like, we are fully in it. And it's not called Actors Equity. It's just equity. And having that headset, I was like, oh, God, I feel seen in so many ways just by that damn headset. So yeah, that's my pitch. We want to change the name. Don't make me sing Beyonce because I can do that as well.
Do you want to share some of those numbers now, or tell people where they can find those if they want to see them?
No.
Okay.
And that's not to hide anything from anyone. I mean, because I think the numbers will change. It's not in the millions. It's not. Although some resolutions are up in the millions. So, and I think it would be premature to do so. And there's no way that we'll be able to do that. And also, before we go on, we have been getting a lot of emails from fellow members. And if you're wondering why you might not get a response from us in the next 2 days, is we just finally got the full information yesterday, early afternoon. And the booklet is over 100 pages. And we are expected to know all of that between Sunday and Tuesday. So while we want to answer, like we want to engage with you, we're members just like you. And we just don't have the bandwidth. We just don't to do all of that. So have some grace with us if you can. And we will get back to you, I promise.
Thank you, Heather. And I think it's a great time to point out that I found out just before this meeting that episode 13 has already been viewed by over 1,500 people. And so people are engaging with these episodes. They are watching them. Some of that is live and much of it is on people's own times later. But so thank you for doing these to all of our guest speakers today. And we'll move forward and we'll talk about the resolutions. Our first one is about stage managers needing support from union members to staff, and who's going to advocate for the stage managers and how is that going to go. And so the resolution is looking for inclusion, communication, and education. Ruth, do you want to talk a little bit and summarize that? We won't read through the full resolution at this, but talk a little bit about what that resolution is attempting to do.
Yeah, happy to. And I will also say that this resolution, which we're calling in support of stage managers, is really more than anything just another call to be recognized and seen and treated as equal members. This was created with what was it, over 10 of us, I think, stage managers working for several months to write this. So as you mentioned, Jason, there's kind of 3 articles that we created. The first is inclusion, asking for inclusion when enforcing policy and contract terms, inclusion in marketing materials, the same as actors, and inclusion in contract language, right? We talk a lot about capital A actor means all members. We shouldn't have to consider ourselves capital A stage managers. The language should just reflect that it is all members. In the communication article, we ask for more timely and transparent communication between staff and stage management members, especially when we are asking for clarification about rules. We ask for a dedicated stage management business rep, someone who knows our job and can better answer those questions, and who can continue advocating for us on the staff level. We ask for a stage management portal, just like the deputy portal, so that we have access to those forms. We can fill them out digitally. We're living in the 21st century, so that there can be better tracking when we're reporting issues. And we ask for education. That's our third article. Education of members and producers and staff. That's part of being treated as equal members, everyone understanding that the same rules apply to us as well. And clarifying that the stage management is not a union representative. And Jennifer, I know you spoke a lot to this on our last episode, but that we are not a representative of the union. We are not supervisors. We are not disciplinarians. It is not our job to make sure that the rules are followed. We are members just like everyone else.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those clarifications there, Ruth. Heather, is there anything you want to add to that?
I just want to add, we sign the exact same contracts as everyone else. We're not signing a super special like stage manager contract. We might have a writer that's different if we have different duties, but it's the exact same contract. So I love that we included getting rid of, sorry, it's early here for me, getting rid of the capital A actor, because I really hate signing my contract when it says that. Not that I don't love my actors, because I do. We couldn't do our job without y'all. But we're stage managers, and that's just such a small thing to change. It's so incredibly small, but the symbolic nature of that is huge in recognizing that it's different. So yeah, I was going to ask Dr. Jennifer something on that, and I can't remember what it is. Welcome to, being in the 40s and being in the middle of a pandemic. Pandemic brain is real, y'all. It really is.
Well, I am going to flip things over to Dr. Jennifer here. And I know, I understand you covered this a little more extensively the other day, but is there anything that you want to add right now for context or expand upon?
Yes, I'm sure. But first, before I forget, I want to speak to the fact that even on our contracts, like the contractual language for first day of rehearsal is literally on our contract. And I can tell you without a doubt that I have filled out that date being the actual first day of rehearsal multiple times, when in reality, equity is looking for my first day of work. So I also think that we need to be thinking about how the terms that we're just using even on the contract are affecting us, because in each one of those cases, my contract had to get sent back to me, which also delayed my first paycheck because it said first day of rehearsal. So I assumed they meant actual first day of rehearsal rather than first day of work, which was what they were actually meaning. They were just using first day of rehearsal instead. To speak to the historical context of it, stage managers, a large reason why disciplinarians, and we aren't supervisors in the like formal labor sense of it, is because of our continuous participation within this union. We've been here since the beginning, and in 1930s, equity determined that we were too close to management to be the equity deputy, because they wanted to make sure that there was an additional person to help protect everyone who was on that contract. And I think that it is long overdue for us to get added into that swarm, right? Like I don't feel like our connections with the producers are remotely the same as they were back in the 1920s. Our job has shifted significantly since then. And I think it's just time that we are, folded into the union as full participants. And I also am really upset by the fact that so many people are always asking, what does even the stage manager do? Or if they do know what the stage manager does, they only know like a small fraction of the actual work that we do, and as, union members, I feel like we absolutely need to be educating everyone else in the union about our role, because I think that's part of what the frustration is that they're like, well, you're the stage manager, so obviously your labor is different, and therefore you don't deserve the same protections, or whatever it is that they might be feeling in that moment, when in actuality it's just the miscommunication, it's the misunderstanding of what our job is, because we've made it this mysterious, it's just perpetually become this mysterious thing, and we really just need to demystify what exactly the role of the stage manager is in contemporary theater.
Thank you. And I want to echo that idea of education. I know on our committee in San Diego, Heather and I are both on the liaison committee, and we have multiple stage managers on our committee. And even there, especially some of us actors, and I'm just as guilty as everyone, will frequently leave out the stage managers when we are referring to union business. And every time the stage managers jump up and correct and remind, just as we are learning to do with racial and gender equity throughout the country, I think in our union, it's very important right now to not allow those subliminal separations or absorptions to continue to occur, and to call them out and to keep pointing out. And what I love about these resolutions is the idea that they are going to ingrain it into our structure. They're going to eliminate some of the ways that it's built in to the contracts, to the practices as those go along. And I do want to encourage again, for anyone who's watching, you may feel free to throw questions or comments in the chat as we're going along here. We're going to kind of stay on this topic, but I want to fold in the next resolution, which is 1.5, which is actually related to this. And 1.5 is just about first rehearsals. And this resolution argues that an equity staff member should attend and run every first rehearsal meeting, virtually or in person, and this shouldn't be the responsibility of stage management. And I think this is definitely one of those things that, now that we've learned through the pandemic how staff can join a meeting or a rehearsal through Zoom, through electronically, if they cannot attend physically in person. Would someone like to speak to this resolution and some of the thoughts behind it and some of the ways that it might come alive?
Ruth, I'm just going to read the resolution in its entirety. We haven't really done that in this, but the maker has asked for us to do so, and we're absolutely going to respect that. First rehearsal meetings. Whereas the practice of a stage manager running the Actors Equity Association meeting at first rehearsals gives the false impression that stage managers are responsible for acting on behalf of the union. And whereas the creation of ballots is currently left for the stage manager to do with little to no guidance as far as wording, leading to inconsistencies. And whereas the first rehearsal meeting is a perfect perfect opportunity for staff to engage in a direct, open channel of communication with union members, thereby initiating a proactive relationship for more effective contract administration. And whereas Equity had already begun taking steps to address these concerns with the creation of the field representative position prior to the pandemic, therefore be it resolved that Convention recommends that Council prioritizes the reinstatement of field representatives as our industry reopens, with the expectation that field representatives will attend and run every first rehearsal meeting either virtually or in person, and be it further resolved that convention recommends to council that for the purpose of clarity and consistency, ballots for voting should be provided electronically or physically by Actors Equity Association to the stage manager of any production where the union members may vote on contractual matters. And be it further resolved that convention recommends to council that equity staff members should run these meetings utilizing a first rehearsal meeting agenda created by equity staff, which shall include but is not limited to the election of the deputy, any voting that needs to happen, the union's anti-harassment and anti-racism policies, and union initiatives and policy changes that impact local members. And be it finally resolved that convention recommends to council that if the above is not feasible due to technological or circumstantial limitations, equity staff will find a way to handle the business and communication that needs to occur at this meeting instead of relying on the stage manager to do it.
And do we want to say who proposed that? It looks like the maker is fine with that.
No. Is she, Ruth?
I did not get full clarification on that.
Okay,
but
all right.
we can still
And we will
discuss this
hold.
without bringing that up. Those of you who are delegates do have access to that information.
Yeah, and for anyone watching, we're not keeping things secret like that, but we're also giving the grace to our members who have put these out there to say whether they want their name out there or not. You know, and we're respecting that.
Wonderful.
And part of it, when this comes to the floor, it belongs to the convention, right? It is the convention who will decide in a voting manner what happens with this.
Well, I think this resolution, again, it clarifies duties to such an extent. And I also think we are at an opportunity of things that we've learned in the pandemic where we have Zoom. We also have the option to create recordings. Staff could create recordings that cover some of the basic things so that it doesn't need to be read every time or something like that. We can create videos. We can create resources that allow that. I also personally want to speak as someone who has primarily worked on the West Coast, where for first meetings, it's always the stage manager running it. We get a letter from staff or something. And a few years back, I did a show off Broadway, and they brought us into the equity office for our first meeting. And we had this meeting with staff to go over the contract and to talk about equity. And we had people in the company who were joining the union. And it was so next level to have staff be able to have those conversations with the members. It took the rehearsal of that, and it never even occurred to me that they were taking something from the stage manager, because that wasn't what it was about. It was about relationship with the union, which is, I think, what those first meetings want to be. And rather than just having a fellow member conducting that, I think this is a really strong resolution here. Would anyone else care to speak on this one before we move forward?
I'll just echo what you were saying, Jason, in that I think one of the interesting things as this one was being written was hearing from people who live in not just New York, but in all of the office cities, that it struck them as odd that there wouldn't be a member of staff present at first rehearsal. And as someone myself who has also never worked in an office city, it never even crossed my mind to ask for this from staff.
Yeah.
And it is so refreshing and reaffirming of that idea that we don't represent the union.
Yeah. Except as members.
Right.
So,
I will say that I was not a proponent of this, full disclosure, because the first day of rehearsal is long enough as it is. And I felt like adding more to it, like, was going to be something I didn't want until we got the field reps back, because we had those when I first joined in the early 2000s. And then when the field reps came back, I was like, oh no, now I'm for this. So like I completely changed my mind. It's like if the first day needs to be a half an hour longer, let's let it be a half hour longer. So that way they're getting the information from the union, and it does create a division. So that way they're not looking at me as the all-encompassing knowledge person of the union, because I'm not. and sees me more as a member, being able to sit in the meeting and ask the same kinds of questions that they might.
I also just want to echo that as a member, I think it's great for opportunities when our members get to connect with the union directly, because we have annual meetings in cities, we have regional meetings that people can attend if they can go online or such, but to have a direct communication with staff is valuable for members, and particularly those who don't have frequent contact directly with the union. And it's great to just get those little reminders. This is why we're here. This is why the union exists. This is what the union does for you on this show. This is what you do for the production by being a union member in this. And so I think this is an excellent opportunity to help build union camaraderie, as it were, between members and staff, members and each other, and just a reminder so that it's not just the who are we going to stick with the deputy conversation, which I know occurs in some places when you don't have enthusiastic volunteers.
And sorry, speaking of the deputy, I feel like that's one of those like mythical conversations that are had throughout, especially I feel like in stage management circles. Are we supposed to divulge whoever this deputy person's name is to the actual producers? And there's a lot of like mixed feelings about that, because historically they weren't supposed to be known to the producer, because that person was supposed to be able to turn to the union whenever necessary. They were never supposed to be the person going to the producer to talk about issues. They were just the person to relay them to the union. So it was really supposed to just be whoever the equity members were, to know that that was the person to turn to if they weren't comfortable turning to the union themselves. So it's interesting how, again, the bit larger that we've gotten, how things have changed. And now I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people on here listening and watching going, what are you talking about? Of course the producers are supposed to know the deputy, when in reality, historically, they were not supposed to be known. So we need a clarification. Which ruling are we going with now in 2021? What option do we want? What does the union want? Because that can't come necessarily from stage management, and that's where the expectation was before, was stage management was supposed to have that answer. And I don't think that we have agreed on an answer. So we need the union. And hopefully by having the field representatives inside these initial meetings, they'll be able to answer questions like that have become folklore, and as far as like figuring out what is the definitive answer, what are we going with?
Yeah, and I know today isn't about deputies, but I think clarifying much of the deputy duties, responsibilities, and such would be something that would be very valuable, just all around, both for people within the cast, for the deputies themselves, for stage management, and for producers, just so everyone knows exactly what that role is today. Because as you say, it's had a lot of different permutations over time. And to me, again, speaking from my experience, it's very different if there are 3 equity people, 2 cast members and a stage manager, and there's a deputy, or if there are 3 equity stage management and 15 people in the cast. The role of the deputy can be very different, and the potential penalties for the deputy speaking up in certain ways would be a factor. But again, today is not a day for that, so I will.
But that is something that we call out in that first resolution we were talking about in the education section. We also ask for there to be clarification around the role of the deputy, because that also is part of that equation of what is the role of the stage manager, what is also the role of the deputy.
Excellent. Yes. Who is a member to go to? Who is the deputy to go to? All of those answers. So I think that clarification was very valuable. And once again, I will encourage people to read the first resolution. So it looks like we have a few resolutions here that we are not going to go in depth on. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I mean, we can. There's just a lot in this episode, so we were trying to
Okay, I'll jump over some of the ones, since I know we didn't have someone present who was going to speak to some of this. But speaking on the general level, We have Resolution 4 here, which is a stipulation on remote work for stage managers. And just speaking generally here, the background of this is that with the rise of remote theater work during COVID, duties have changed and the line of what is the stage manager's responsibility is no longer clear. Instead of creating language to clarify this new digital realm, we are left to decipher for ourselves how the old rules apply to the new situations. This resolution seeks to clarify what can be asked of the stage manager and what should not fall on their shoulders, such as redefining what it means to be a board op during a Zoom call. So this addresses many of the new asks that are being made of stage managers and actors when being offered work. Access to equipment, internet, IT knowledge, specific software, etc. Things like that. So would one of you like to speak to this one?
I can speak to this one, but Heather, do you want to say anything first?
I'm a big fan of this one, a real big fan, because our jobs have changed drastically during this great pause, and it's interesting to me that we're expected to do all of the Zooming duties of this, when in a theater, that's someone else's job. It just is. It's someone else's job. It's the sound person. It's the projection person. It's the lighting person. It's an IT person. Like, it's someone else's job, but in this realm, we're doing it. And I know that there's been a lot of debate within stage management circles. Like, if we're not the ones doing it, then what are we doing? And I'm like, we're running the back end, like giving places, like we're having 2 Zooms up. There's so much that we're doing. But I also know that stage managers have a really big FOMO, fear of missing out on stuff. Like, we want to be involved in all of it. And I don't, because I've done some of this remote work. And when there's a technological issue, you can't do any of the other work. You are in that technological issue and you can't give place it. You can't talk to anybody. You can't do anything except try and troubleshoot in real time that. So I love this one. I love it a lot. And I love that it also addresses the fact that stage managers and actors need to have equitable equipment, because that's a real big thing. Like, there's not a lot that you can do with internet, because everyone, wherever they're coming from, that's so different. But just simple, like, do you have a microphone? Like, do you have lighting? Like, those sorts of things that cost money, And if that can be a more equitable thing, I think that puts everyone on a more even playing field.
Thank you. And Ruth?
Yeah, I will try to keep this brief because this is actually one that I wrote mostly. But I have done quite a bit of digital work since the Great Pause, as Heather calls it. And one of the things that really frustrated me was being told by Equity that the old contracts apply, just use the old media rules. And they don't apply. I mean, there are some small bits of it that do, but there are so many situations that don't even begin to be addressed in the old contract language. Like board opping, like, where is that line between I'm just running the room, as far as like I'm doing breakout rooms, I'm making sure that everyone is in the call, but then am I also screen sharing media? Am I playing sound cues? Where is that line between rehearsal and performance? Because in-person rehearsals, often stage managers do run sound cues. Am I helping someone who is having trouble with their green screen or their ring light or their microphone because there's nobody else to turn to? I could go on and on. But what this resolution seeks to do is kind of say, hey, the rules have changed and we need to just have some guidelines as to what that looks like now. And I don't think that this is going away. I think that when we return to in-person, some of this will go away. But now that we know how to do this and this has become a part of our lives, I think it's sticking around for a while. And I know there's different opinions on that, but I don't think this is asking for rules for the next 6 months or however long before we can go back to in-person work. This is an ongoing thing, especially for workshops, readings, development, that kind of thing. And I promise I'm almost done, but to go back to something you said, Heather, about if we're not running Zoom, if we're not doing that technological stuff, what are we doing? The level of overwhelm I have felt during digital productions is unlike anything I felt working in person before. Trying to manage the people calling you on your phone because they can't connect to the call while you're also running the room, while you're also taking script change notes, while you're also trying to keep track of what's happening in this other breakout room. Because have you ever heard of an ASM on a digital project before? I haven't. So you're doing all of it by yourself with no support, with nobody down the hall in the office that you can go to and ask for help. Yeah. And that's another part of the asking for access to equipment, right? That the actors are being sent microphones and ring lights and green screens and Ethernet cords and whatever, but what about me and my need for a second screen so that I can actually see everything I need to work on at the same time? I'll stop there.
No, this is all excellent, and I just want to amplify what you said, that it is very clear that some version of this will be continuing post-pandemic. So I think it is very important to have these things addressed. And I think what you said about workshops in particular, I think we will see developmental workshops where you can grab people from all over the country, or as happened with my wife recently, they did a workshop recently with people all over the world, and they had people joining at 3 a.m. From various parts of the world and everything, so they could all be in, and that's going to continue. And so I think this is an excellent way to codify what is expected, what needs to be provided by producers, what resources are there, where is the union going to protect our stage management, and when do we need to start negotiating for an ASM on a digital project, because it's so easy to think, oh, it's just Zoom, as that moves forward. Before we continue on this, I just want to amplify Erin Choi Swank, dear old friend of mine, threw into the chat on our last topic here. So many people don't understand that if a stage manager has only worked on smaller productions, often their first rehearsal equity meeting is the one that they themselves have to run, as we said, with no guidelines. I've only had 2 contracts where another equity stage manager was in the same meeting, whether it was running it or they were. I've once had a virtual call from a business rep for it. Some contracts require the deputy to be in meetings with the producers. And so again, just speaking to that idea of clarification, what we need to do, and also adding the component, thank you, Erin, that for many stage managers, they're being asked to run a meeting that should not even technically be on their shoulders as their first order of business with the company, after their prep time. So excellent points there, Erin, on the last resolution. For this resolution, regarding this need for virtual production guidelines, Dr. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to add into this?
Oh, I mean, only to say that I agree. I don't think that it's necessarily going anywhere. And, I think that it speaks to a larger conversation as far as defining what stage management really is, and encompassing whatever this new Zoomed stage management is going to be into whatever that definition is going to end up being, I have a lot of thoughts on the definition, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
But it's not going anywhere. We are at another pivot point for stage management. And I guess what I will say is that in my historical research of stage management, one thing that has become very clear in looking at all of these handbooks that I've looked at is that stage managers are extremely adaptable. That's like, and I feel like you ask any stage manager and they're going to agree with that, right? Like we pivot very, very well. And I don't think that a definition of stage management is going to hold us back from being able to adapt into those situations. I think instead it should be able to clarify what exactly is the purpose of the stage manager when we're looking at the production process. What is their purpose? Is their purpose really just to be the secretary and to write down the blocking and all of that kind of stuff? I would argue otherwise. I think that we have a higher calling in that process. There is something additional that we bring to the process that is unique to us that I don't think that a lot of producers sometimes recognize that is what we are bringing to the table. It's not the fact that we're organizing, although we do that. It's not the fact that we're taking all of these notes, although again, we do that. I think that we are ultimately the person advocating for the production itself, right? Like we are the person that's pushing. When we face a crisis in the middle of that moment, what are we asking ourselves? What is the goal of fixing this problem? Like whatever that issue is. We walk into tech, the scenic design isn't completely up. It's the first day of tech. We're supposed to be staging. Okay, so how do we use that time, right? We as the stage manager have to fundamentally ask ourselves, how are we going to use this day? And we don't do it all by ourselves. We have to use, all of the other skills that we have to talk to the entire production team and come down to what is the most important thing that this production does right now today. Is it more important that we get these actors up on that stage and we just do what we have to do, work around whatever scenic elements we don't have in this moment? Or is it more important that we say, you know what, actors, enjoy your day off, come back at 6, whatever, scenic design, the shop, here's an extra 5 hours inside the space. Do as much as you can in the next 5 hours. We'll revisit this later. In that moment as the stage manager, it isn't our organizational skills that you're calling for us. It's not, although those things all have a play in this conversation, ultimately our purpose is how do we get to the finishing line, which is how do we, and I would also argue that we need to broaden that question to include the care and health of each person that is in this production as well. We need to broaden it a little bit more, which I think ultimately will also require a little bit more training on our behalf. But I also don't see that necessarily as a bad thing. As time has gone on, we have seen the specialization of all of these fields, right? In the 1920s, you were an actor, you were a stage manager, you would direct when you wanted to, you might even produce. You were wearing 8 million hats at the exact same time. And I think that although we see that on a smaller level in the regional areas of this country, I also think that there are a lot of people who are interested in specializing, in the stage management survey from 2019, I think it was like 89% of all stage managers who took the stage management survey had at least one college education class specifically on stage management. Now, some of those people obviously got MFAs, some people got BFAs specifically in stage management, but 89% of the people who took that survey took at least one course in stage management. So we're seeing this specialization. And I think that this Zoom stuff is just to circle back. It's the fact that we need to look at this definition. We need to see how this specialization is going to affect the definition, but also bringing in, where the future of theater is going. And I think it's going in that direction of specialization. And we need to accept it and figure out a good definition that will umbrella all of the things that we do and the motivations behind the actions that we're taking. There you go.
Thank you.
Love it.
Thank you.
And I also just real quick, your comment about how part of the job is to assess the situation and figure out what needs to happen. I think that's where it gets sticky, right? Because that is our instinct and that is part of the job. And so when you're in a situation where something needs to happen and there isn't clear guidelines about what is our job and what's not, we then absorb that and assume that. And then that becomes the expectation moving forward.
It is. And to me, virtual feels like tech on steroids.
Yes.
With no production manager, no technical director. It's you with the wolves. It feels like the Hunger Games at times. I've never been so tired from a 2-hour virtual performance than I have a 10 out of 12, which we all know for stage managers equals a 14. But like, I would rather go into a theater and do that than do just a simple 2-hour live Zoom that's going out to the masses, because it really does feel like the Hunger Games. Like, what's going to happen if this happens? I do this. Like it's a lot for my brain. It's a lot for my brain to be able to take all of that in.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, I just want to remind anyone who's watching and listening right now, feel free to throw any comments or questions in the chat. And it looks like we do have time to circle back to that other resolution that we jumped over earlier. And this is just on clarifying stage manager and ASM minimums. Stage managers are expected to do extra duties without any additional compensation because minimum salaries are normally higher. And this resolution just seeks to clarify with producers that additional hours need to be paid out in overtime, since once we reach our allotted hours for the week, and that extra duties need to be negotiated for pay, that they just can't be lumped in just because stage managers make more. That's the general tenor of the resolution. Does Ruth, do you want to speak to that?
I can. I feel like I've talked a lot on this episode. I wonder, Heather, if you want to chime in on this one.
God bless you. Know you have it. I will say that I think that this is important for stage managers because I have found when I've gone into a new theater, if I do it by the book, I will get a producer saying, well, so-and-so didn't do it that way. Or they pushed the buttons and we didn't have to pay them. Or they did this duty and they just did it. And so like it's shocking to me sometimes, because I'm like, but okay, they might have done it that way, but that's not actually how it's supposed to be done. And then how do you do that without throwing the previous stage manager under the bus? Like it becomes a really hard situation. So I think that we have to, as stage managers, we have to figure out a way to do our jobs as just the job, and like stop taking on extra things. Like Brooke said, the amount of stuff that is considered not billable to overtime kind of broke me in. And yeah, it is. Like there's so much that we do that we should be getting paid extra for. There just is. Like our production meetings don't count. And those production meetings, we can be there for a really long time. Same for after tech meetings, can be a really long time. And it's I think if there's clarification on what is billable, it would greatly help. Like we are told what we can't do. We can't push buttons, even though some do, without getting paid. As actors, you can't just be asked to go move furniture unless you're coming into a scene or going out. And those are just really small things. But there are so many other things that we are asked to do that we should be getting paid more for, especially when you go over the OT. But it's also considered, oh, you get paid more than actors. So you get paid more than them. So you're just expected to do this. And a lot of contracts have a tech bump. Not all contracts do, but a lot of them do. And it's assumed by everyone, and by everyone I mean producers, that that tech bump covers any overtime, which it doesn't. Like, so I think it's multi-layered, and it can be tricky. So I can see why it's confusing as well.
Yeah, and Brooke, hi Brooke. Brooke also adds that times on emails are another element that can fall through the cracks of time. And this is something, you know, I'm sure this has been spoken of in other panels, but the We See You White American Theater demands or whatever, talking about the ways things have always been done that place undue burdens. And so I think many of these things that you're mentioning of just, oh yeah, it's expected that you'll stay for that meeting, even though it's an extra 2 hours of your day, or it's expected that you'll have all those emails replied to by the following day, and it's the actor's version of, yeah, go home and work on that for a couple hours and then come back tomorrow, and so those are these expectations and histories. And I think this resolution is a wonderful step towards clarifying what are the actual expectations of my workload in a week. And if they exceed that, how are we going to compensate me? And what am I going to be expected to do during that time? And so I think this resolution is a wonderful clarification, and for members, but also for producers. And I think what Heather mentioned earlier is another key thing. We talked in the first resolution about education, is that many producers have gotten away with or have experienced stage management or utilized stage management in ways that are out of bounds for the contract, but they have done it for so long that they assume that that is what stage managers do. And I think there's a great education component to this resolution that allows producers to understand and to clarify. And sometimes if they step back and think about it, they would go, oh yeah, I guess that's not really your job. But it has just been folded in for so many years. And so, Dr. Jennifer, do you want to speak to this one as well?
You know it. Also, going into that education, because I know that I've been guilty of it myself, of doing things that the producers were like in the middle of, they were expecting things out of me, and trying to navigate that whole brand new world as a newish equity stage manager to figure out what exactly am I supposed to do. And because we haven't had access to the field reps, it compounded the issue even more, because I couldn't just turn to someone and be like, am I allowed to say no to this? Like, should I do this? Like, what should I do in this situation? And so I think that a lot of these resolutions that we're seeing will help bridge a lot of the compounded issues that we currently face as a field. And then to speak to the historical part that you kind of brought up a little bit, it's funny because when the no more 10 out of 12 movement kind of really got started, I got a lot of emails because it's gotten around that I'm, the history nerd. And so I had several people asking me, where did this come from? And I can tell you that it came from 1952-ish was when they really first started to cap how long rehearsals were going for. At which point that's when they kind of added you should only do rehearsals for like 8 hours out of 10. And then once you get to the week before you open, you should not have to work more than like 10 hours. So it wasn't the specific language that we have today, but it was capping what they were already expected to do, right? So like when we're looking at this now and going, how could they stand for this? This is terrible that they would allow us to work for 10 hours out of 12. In reality, they were actually being exploited for even more of that before that rule even came to play. Right. And then instead of being able to navigate and change it over time to make it better, we've just kind of stuck with the status quo as it is, and that's just become the status quo. So I'm also, even though I'm looking at all of this historical research, I also firmly feel that like nothing should be considered sacred right now. We should really consider all of the things, all of the rules, and really think about what kind of a theatrical process we want to create. And I think that that's a big question that all of these delegates are going to have to ask themselves as they're trying to navigate which one of these regulations or resolutions they want to pass, and just kind of like getting all of that information out there. Like how much like change can we make happen? This is the time. We are long overdue for this. And I mean, I guess I could go more into like just how anti-labor this country really has been for the last 50 or so years. And now we're like hopefully being able to turn that. Let's, get our union to be stronger. Let's get it back in the direction that we want it to go in, which is why this, these resolutions are so important.
And I will say we owe such a debt of gratitude to the members who put the labor in on the We See You White American Theater. Such a debt of gratitude, because it's such an encompassing, living, breathing document that I think was really eye-opening. I know it was eye-opening to me as a member, because I'm like, yes, I've been complicit in that. I just have. And also to our producers, to be put on notice about issues that they might think, oh, that doesn't affect us, but it does. It affects all of us. And so just acknowledging like the labor that went into that document is huge.
Yes, thank you, Heather. We have 2 comments here in the chat, and we are almost at time, so I want to try to take these quickly. Joshua talks about, can you do more of your email work during the day, which I think just kind of amplifies that the email work is still part of the job. And so whether it's during the day or during other time, it has now been added. 20 years ago, stage managers did not have email as a part of their day, or 25 years ago. And now that is a new component of the job that has been added in and folded into the hours. Ruth, do you want to say something on that?
Yeah, sorry, I just have to chime in on this because this is akin to comments I hear a lot, and I know that it is a genuine question, but it doesn't sit well for me personally, because I think it's part of not understanding the full job and not understanding the volume of emails that we get, and that having the brain capacity to do multiple tasks at once is limited. And this is not just about emails. This is about, can't you work on your rehearsal report during the day while rehearsal's happening? Can't you make the run sheet while you're working? That because a lot of people don't see that work and don't understand what goes into it, there's kind of this, I'm not speaking eloquently, but a misunderstanding of how much we're capable of doing at one time and how much we're capable of focusing on at once while so many other things are happening.
And Joshua is a stage manager. Joshua, we love you, but come on. You're with us. We know you're playing some devil's advocate here, or else I'm going to put words in your mouth that you are. But can you do email work during the day? Sure, if you have an ASM. Not all of us have an ASM. And so, like, you're having to create paperwork that for the track of backstage, if you're lucky to have someone back there. And before email, I literally walked around a building and distributed by hand. Yeah, I mean, God bless the email, but like we're also getting emails on our days off. We're getting them at midnight. Like, and we're getting phone calls.
I think, and Josh said here, my point isn't multitasking, it's rethinking how we do our jobs, change the perception that the PSM has to be in the room the entire time. And what I think this goes back to, and I'm going to circle this up, and I want to touch Brooke's point, and then we do need to complete today, but I want to circle this back to the idea of the resolution as clarification. What is going to be expected if I sign up to be a stage manager? How many hours a week do I have to give you? And if the duties of the job are going over that number of hours, how are you going to compensate me? And we're going to clarify the duties, we're going to clarify the hours, and we're going to have mechanisms in place for when those get exceeded. I'm gonna, Brooke had a wonderful point about education, that educational videos could be created to answer rulebook questions. And those could be placed up, like a frequently asked questions thing, but we also have the opportunity to do that with videos, summary videos. Aaron says you also get those looks if you click or type loudly during a rehearsal and everything. And the idea of stage managers being technical and artistic, and you need to pay attention to the art that you're to maintain later. So I love that we have this vibrant conversation happening here. We are at time for the day, so I do want to say thank you to everyone who watched this live. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching it subsequently by recording. But primarily, I want to thank Heather and Ruth and Dr. Jennifer for giving us their expertise. We had great voices here. giving us clarification on what these resolutions are. And so some of the language, I encourage everyone to check those out further. Brooke says, thank you for starting this conversation. Yes, absolutely. And moving the conversation forward, I will say. One final thing, please join us tomorrow for the last episode. That's Saturday, April 24th at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, for a discussion of EPAs, the equity principle auditions, and safety. So that will be tomorrow. And I want to thank everyone who's out there. Have a wonderful day. Stay union strong. And thank you again to our panelists. And
Thank you so much, Jason.
End this. Thank you.
One closing comment. I feel like we owe it to the maker of the resolution we were just discussing to clarify what's actually being said in that resolution. So I'm going to put that comment or that language in the comments. So be sure to check out what's actually being asked for in that last resolution, just because it's a lot of sticky things.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And all right, that's going in there. And I think we can go ahead and end recording.